to the conclusion. Where I think I loved the way that Keirsey broke it down to words and tools. It's the fastest typing system, of any to me. If you're trying to just get basic temperament, um, on a basic level, when people use words to communicate, they use them in one of two ways. They either use them in an abstract way that refers to concepts and intangible things, or they use concrete language that refers to tangible things that can be seen and heard and tasted and touched and all that stuff. Now, obviously, everybody uses some of both of those, but if someone is actually willing to speak to you for more than just a few grunts or a few sentences, within a pretty short period of time, they establish themselves as preferring one or the other. The way I look at it, especially when it comes to and the abstract side, which is the intuitives, it is how long does it take them to ask a what if question? Because if I'm talking to an intuitive, it's less than 10 minutes. And if it's somebody who is very talkative and tends to blurt things out right off the bat, then it'll take a lot less than that. It's just that's the way their mind works. Is it's always going back to the what if this was like this? What can I change about this? What's the possibilities of this? Whereas the SJs and the SPs, as the concrete types, are always going to be talking about the way it is or the way it was, but it's still going to be very fact-based. And it doesn't mean that we can't talk about abstract concepts. It just means that it's not our instinctual preference. Like, we're going to kind of always be, whether it's conscious or not, kind of pushing it back in the direction of real life examples and things that we can hold on to, that we can point to and say, here's something I know. So if you look at it that way, then you answer the question there, are you abstract or concrete? And that tells you the whole NS thing. And then the only other question then becomes, okay, well, if you've established, say, that concrete is your thing, then it's a matter of how you use tools. Do you use tools in a cooperative way, or do you use them in a utilitarian way? And basically it's, when you think about how you do something, are you thinking about, well, what does the law say? What does my family say? What is it, what is it that I'm supposed to do in this situation? Or are you thinking more about, what works? What's the most effective or efficient or fun way to do this? And it doesn't mean that if you think about those things that you ignore your laws in the family and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that all your morals go out the window. It just means that that's not your first instinct. That's not the thing that first, your way you frame it, instead of, well, first I'm thinking about what am I supposed to do, what's expected of me, and then I think, okay, well, out of that, what's the most effective way? Instead, you're thinking of what's most effective, and then, what can I do that's, along with my value system or whatever it is you're operating on. So if you got the concrete down, and then you say, okay, well, first I'm thinking of, well, really what I think is the best way before I think about anybody else, then that's the utilitarian way. And so then the combination of the concrete and utilitarian, that's SP. And so you can do that with each of those same groups and get the temperament basic, without even worrying about any of the more complicated ways of breaking things down. And so to me, I have nothing against talking about cognitive functions and even like, phobias and all these kind of things that you can get out in the open when you try to delve really deep into things. But to me, they're not really necessary in order to form a basic personality type. It's all fine if you want to do that, but it's not. To me, it actually has a way of complicating things if you're still trying to figure out what the type is. If you got all that down and you're solid and you're like, okay, I'm this, then it seems like that's a time to really start thinking about those things if you want to. But if you're still kind of confused, or you're trying to sort of form your identity and stuff, I think all that just gets in the way. And that's my opinion. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that. They want to try to do that right from the start. But to me, that's really hard, and I think especially if you're dealing with somebody who really at their core is an SP or even an SJ, really sensors in general, when you start from that side of it, it's going to be real difficult, because it's real hard for us to get in touch with that um, very internal side. I think especially more extroverted people, it's going to be even more difficult because you're asking somebody to dig into places that they very rarely do, and somehow use that to find their basic identity. And I think that's a little much to ask of a lot of people. So, that's my opinion of that.
Yeah. Well, what's